Well, happy 2023 to you. It's Colin Kelly from Comsteria here. You can find out more about us at comsteria.co.uk. We're all about powerful communication. And I was back at the gym this morning, starting the new year as best as I can. I was on the treadmill and I saw on Sky News, it's such a tough time of industrial unrest, isn't it? With all these strikes. And Sky News even have this little ticker thing at the top left of the screen telling us who's on strike today. And it kind of scrolls round like a carousel. Anyway, there's this rail strike on at the moment, as I'm sure you know. And it seems to me that every time the union representative is interviewed on TV, they always come live from the picket line outside the railway station with their staff members and the banner up, and you can see some kind of disappointed looking members of the public around in the background. And it seems that every time the government minister is interviewed, they are far away from that situation in the cosy confines of the television studio. And so the way it often comes across to me is that the union rep is close to their own staff and close to the inconvenienced members of the public. And so if we're close to them, as in we're in physical proximity to them, then it's easier to, the kind of subtext of that is, well, you're on their side, you're with them. Whereas if you are in the well-lit TV studio, physically distant from that space, then it's much harder for people to think that you're on their side. There's a very clear division. Now, of course, that paints a very simple picture, which sometimes the media like to tell. It suits them to go and film Mick Lynch on the picket line, and it suits them to have the government minister come into the studio. It doesn't need to be like that. And if you actually go and look at the rules and regulations about how the media is supposed to cover an industrial dispute, there are rules around that. And it might be that it could be suggested to some of the broadcasters, well, look, you don't need to have the head of the trade union in front of the picket line all the time. You could ask them to come in. You could film them somewhere else. And likewise, if I was running communications for the government and Sky News phone up and say, look, could your minister come in? They don't have to come in. You could, for example, say, well, yes, the transport minister is available and they'll be on the concourse at Euston Station, which would provide a different picture, a different context, and they wouldn't be so physically distant from the staff and from the public. Now, of course, it may well be that the government and the government ministers want to be physically distant from the staff and the inconvenienced members of the public, because if you're close to them, you might be heckled. You might have your interview disrupted. Maybe that, from their point of view, is worse. But the way it's coming across just now is that the trade unions and the striking workers are very much with the public and on their side, and that the employers and the government, the politicians, are removed from that because they are physically removed from it. So that's about the strikes. My message to you and the clients that we work with here at Comsteria is that if you're giving an interview, you do have to think about how might this be perceived, of physically where am I? Am I in a cosy office? Am I in a TV studio? Am I on the high street? What's going on around me? Because all of that is a really important part of the story. Could it be made to look like I'm detached from this and out of touch or don't care? So always think that through or take some advice. And the other thing to remember is that once you've come to your conclusions about that, you've always got a choice, right? Especially if you are somebody, sought after, senior, important in an organization, or this is a really big story, you choose the settings. So they might ask you to come in. You don't need to come in. There's lots of different ways of doing this now. They can take something remote. You could film it yourself and send it across to them. There's lots of different ways that they could do it. You don't need to go into the studio. There may well be situations where that's exactly what you want to do, but you don't need to. And please do think about that context, because it's really important. It's a key part of the story, is what's going on in the background, and physically where are you? And really importantly, well, where's the other side of this news story?